I mean, it's there.
I would hope if it had been a male doctor, it would have been the same. But knowing some of the male doctors that they've had in Star Trek, it might not have been the same.
Yeah, like can you picture McCoy doing this
Oh
or
no, maybe
right?
maybe the hologram.
he would he would
I
be
think
like, "Damn it, Jim! I'm a doctor, not a mechanic."
yeah,
That yeah,
exactly.
that would have been it.
Yeah. No, for sure the EMH probably would have done it because he would have no fear of assimilation
Hmm.
being a hologram, but
Yeah.
and maybe maybe Dr. Bashir from Deep Space 9 might do it, but yeah.
Him, it would just depend, I think.
Yeah. Actually, sorry, bringing up Deep Space Nine. I mean, obviously, the audience, will hear this much further down the road, but just this past couple of days, we lost somebody who's part of the Star Trek family. Aaron Eisenberg, who played Nog on Deep Space Nine, he suddenly passed away at the age of 50.
Yeah, yeah, that was a really shocker because I mean he wasn't that old, and I know I haven't seen him anything in quite a while, but when I saw that pop up, I'm like, no, not Nog.
Right.
Yeah.
He's like one of the few characters I really enjoyed from DS9.
Yeah, he also had an episode on Deep Space Nine about PTSD, actually,
Oh yeah,
Yes.
he lived in the
and
holodeck for like a month.
yeah, he did. Like he lived in the holodeck. He didn't want to come out, and
Forgot all
they
about
kind of
that one.
just they kind of just let him like live in there until he was able to kind of find his strength to leave. But yeah, what a shame. He had some lifelong health problems that I think may have contributed to his death. So yeah, that's a real shame. We lost Aaron Eisenberg. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring it down. I just
No,
That's
it's
okay.
fine.
we said DS9 and it reminded me.
Yes, I mean that's understandable. Next scene, we're in the detention cell. The captain has requested that the Borg be transported directly to a cell instead of somewhere else on the ship. We have Beverly is attending to him. He's on a stretcher, that kind of thing. She says that like his neural implants are damaged, and they talk about it. And she asks if Geordi can do it, and he figures out he probably can, and then they can add some sort of program in there, so when he goes back to the collective, he can spread it like a virus and get rid of everyone, kind of thing. Picard is into that plan for sure. So, but we again have Bleeding Heart Beverly like not wanting to be a part of any of that. So
Well, I mean, this is a real. I mean, Mark, you said early on where we start the episode with a real moral dilemma. Well, then we get really into a moral dilemma of do we do something that will kill an entire race of beings? Who, you know what I mean? Like, who is Picard or anybody to decide if this race of beings should live or die? And yet here he is ready to commit genocide. It's a
sorry, I was gonna say, and that goes into the next scene. They're in the observation room and they're all sitting around the table, and Geordi's talking about it'll take a few months probably for it to take hold with the whole collective, and and of course Beverly is just like, we shouldn't do this because it's genocide. It's basically what she says. We can't just kill an entire race. And I put in the notes, everyone, that Picard just informs her the Borg are the worst. I just don't see this one as an individual, and and that's like, it's understandable because he's been a part of them, but also he's still not that bad usually about living beings. So many people in this episode have moral dilemmas, and some of them are on one side and some are on the other. Some change their minds anyway.
Yeah, he would never propose a virus to kill the Romulans or any of the other sentient creatures, but the Borg, he had no hesitation at first. He was like, yeah, let's write that code and let's hack these Borg and get rid of them.
And it's really interesting too. Like in this conversation, you really see how Beverly is really the only one holding this side of the issue. Like everybody else is like, we're at war, lady.
Yeah.
When did you not know, like that we're at war? And she's trying to like reconcile this idea of committing genocide with the fact that she has a patient, an individual patient, in her sickbay.
And they're, they say that they're at war, and she questions that. And this is where it becomes hard for me, because it's like, they have done all of this stuff, and those are acts of war, taking over these civilizations and assimilating everyone. That does seem like acts of war, but they're also not formally saying, hey, let's do this. And I don't know that I would want to kill an entire race, even if they were like that. You know what I mean? It would just, I have no other words except for to say dilemma. Like, that is the heart of that.
Yeah. But I mean, like, this is a classic science fiction device, right? Introduce an impossible moral dilemma, which you could absolutely understand both sides of the issue. And you could see Beverly's point of view. You can understand that this is an individual person, but then you understand Picard and everybody else. And, to be honest, Picard here is not really acknowledging there is a degree of revenge on his end. Like, I don't think Picard is acknowledging that at all right now.
No, not at all. And he says that they're all, he basically says they're like an arm. They're just another piece of the whole. But he had a name. So a few of them are a little more than just a drone kind of thing, but not really a lot. But it's like the Cybermen or whatever, like we were saying before, or Daleks or something. But there's still like enough that would make some of them a slightly more individual because they have ranks and all. But I think that anything they do is good. It's right. Again, like, this is a TV show, and we're having problems.
We're having a deep
what's going on.
I know, we're having like a deep discussion about genocide.
Of like cyborg aliens. So we go back to the cell, and Picard and Geordi and Beverly, they go down because the Borg has woke up. So, the Borg has woke up. They're going down to see him, and he is wandering around the cell trying to find something. Well, they figure he's trying to find like some sort of communications hub, like some sort of place where he can patch in and contact the collective, because the only thing he knows is that they're a group. Assimilate, and that's, they're all one thing, they're all the Borg. He doesn't know anything else, so he's got to get out of there. Of course, Beverly's still worried about him, so she thinks he's hungry, and of course they talk about how the Borg actually eat, where they just get energy that whatever the cells in their, bodies or whatever need, or their parts, and convert it to whatever they need. Geordi's going to get a panel and put in so that this Borg can hook up and have his food, instead of a replicator. But, I don't suppose a replicator could replicate any just energy. I guess it could do an energy surge or something.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, like, if it was a regular person in there, there'd be a replicator or whatever, but actually, even if it was a regular person, I don't think they, like, I don't think they put a replicator in there. I think they still bring them, like food, because you shouldn't give prisoners access to any computer system in your ship or whatever. But like for the Borg, they can't just bring him a ham sandwich. Like they have to set him up with something that he can ingest energy. Keep him going.
Yeah, you just can't bring him a power bar. He's got to plug in someplace, right?
It's like, just imagine like from some sort of old timey prison movie where they just put the tray with the piece of bread and a glass of water on it down there for it. There you go.
Yeah.
The interesting about this scene here is, I think it's the first time we ever see one of the Borg completely cut off from the collective, and you can see that he's very lost. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't have any orders, and he can't communicate. So he just seems lost.
Picard had also requested that they have his signals neutralized so that the Borg don't realize that he's in there. But as he's walking around and I guess he might be panicking for a cyborg. Beverly notices, and she thinks that he might be scared, but she does say, if I didn't know better, because, well, he's a robot, but he's also not a robot, and then we have this whole thing with Data having, whether he had been, counts as being sentient or not, previous episode.
In the scene, too, Picard says, arrange to feed it. So he refers to the Borg as it. Mm-hmm. Like, he would never refer to Data as it.
No. And that's something that I definitely thought of, because, we have covered Measure of a Man. That's what it's called, isn't it?
That's another good episode.
Yeah.
And he was so on Data's side, saying that Data is a he, but this Borg is not. And it's the main difference is that Data was completely built, and the Borg was some other being that got parts plugged into him. Whether one of them's good and one of them's bad, that doesn't necessarily matter. I would think that they would both be a he or she or that, not an it either way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I watched it, when he said feed it, I'm like, man, that really struck a chord with me.
And that goes back to you all saying that it was still some revenge on his part.
Oh, yeah.
He's trying not to show that, but that's definitely what's happening. So then we move on, and we're in one of the rec rooms where there's fencing things. We see two people sparring, and turns out it is Picard and Guinan, and she loses, and she says how she hates the game because she's lost, and he reminds her, well, you didn't say that last week whenever you won twice, or whatever he says to her. They start talking about the Borg, because she says she thinks he would be worried that they're going to come after them. Picard is not really dealing with any of it, since he let the Borg on board, but then he's calling it, and then and I called it, but then he's calling him it, and he's back and forth, and so he's like, oh, well, it's not a big deal, we're going to use it to destroy the other ones anyway, kind of thing.
Mm. Yeah, this is actually a really great pairing, besides the fact that it's Whoopi Goldberg, and we love Whoopi Goldberg, yeah. But if we remember back to when the Enterprise first met the Borg, it was because Q did it. Q threw them across the galaxy, basically, and forced them to meet the Borg in this sort of, you're not ready for everything out here yet. And Guinan was the only one on board who knew who the Borg were. And because her people had been pretty much almost wiped out by the Borg. And so this is the perfect pairing, because you've got Picard, who was assimilated by the Borg, and then you've got Whoopi Goldberg, or Guinan, who survived the Borg. And so this is a really great conversation. It's actually one of my favorite scenes in the whole show, because it really shows two people who are victims of the Borg. Picard's still trying to work stuff out, but Guinan already knows how she feels.
Mm-hmm. She's even more against it than he was. Like, he was just like, nope, we'll take it on, but just so that we can send it back and kill it. And she's just like, you shouldn't have done this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always find any episode with Guinan very interesting. I find her to be a very, very interesting character. But yeah, I felt right away, she's trying to remind him that, mercy can be dangerous.
Yeah. They go back and spar again, and she fakes an injury, and then, and then she gets him. I don't know what that's called, but she, poked him with the foil. And so then she won, because he felt sorry for her.
I believe it's called scoring a touch.
Thank you, sir.
I don't know much about fencing, but I know I look forward to the future when we get to wear sparkly outfits every day.
Oh, no. Okay.
And have sparkly towels.
I know.
Their towel technology is light years ahead of ours.
Oh, no.
Light years.
It is terry cloth on the back.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah.
Okay.
I also have sparkly sheets.
I try to keep quiet about the fabrics, because for the most part, I love how things are more simple, and some cultures have really crazy dress, but some of the things are more simple, and the fabrics are kind of, But then, their entire fencing uniforms were made out of this, shiny stuff, which would be uncomfortable because none of that is comfortable. Their masks were covered in it, Guyan's hair was covered in it, and then it's on the back of all their